because you guys are normally my low priority. We can go over them like today if you want to. I just keep rushing to do more lessons because, especially with the whole coronavirus scare, I'm worried they're going to cancel school on us.
Yeah.
But,
all just meet up at
so,
the library.
stop. What that means, don't overreact right now. Please do not. I will show you what, check it. So here's what Dr. Bauer sent out. And this was to the entire Worthington community. So essentially, this is what you need to care about. We won't stop teaching. If the state tells us we need to start closing public schools, it will probably be for 2 weeks at least. Like that would be the shortest closure we would probably take. And then we'd be heading towards spring break. Obviously, we would not be looking at you guys doing stuff over spring break. But if we cancel school like starting Monday, obviously there's like 3 weeks still till spring break. So in Schoology, which you should all use for other classes, I'm guessing, you have a Math 2 class. I don't use it, and when I click here, it will be embarrassing because there's like nothing here except for when we were at camp. So what you don't know is I'm pretty darn good at Schoology, actually. I just don't use it this year because I'm, just doing other stuff this year, trying to make worksheets and everything else. I don't have time for Schoology. If classes are canceled, like if you cannot come to school, come to Schoology. I will probably change this that you land on the updates page. Check the updates page. I will have posted directions for what you can do while we're out and how you can process through things. Make sense? Schoology. Yeah.
So we're gonna have like no school. Does that mean we'll do like 8 hours of school like that?
You would assume it probably won't take you 8 hours because, there is time at school that is wasted because you are dealing with the group dynamic as opposed to just you on your own. Wham, bang, boom, get through things and then you're done.
It's like 4 classes.
Yeah, and it would depend on how much the teachers actually post.
If they gave us the same amount of school and we had to do it in our own time, I feel like maybe it'd take us like...
Trust me, you can just crawl.
Yeah, they probably will. That will be a bad thing.
I bet if we could, we could probably do the whole school day and like maybe,
Think about it.
Oh.
we had our own
You
time.
need your resource packet out.
Think about it. When we come back to school, the first half year is like plus 20 revisions. It would be so sad.
It's their fault.
It's their fault.
You know what I just thought of when you said plus 20 revisions? A Phoenix role-playing game.
Oh no.
Like D&D or like one of those other games.
Oh my
but
gosh,
with all of the aspects of Phoenix. So you roll a die to determine how many assignments you got back in progressing. And then you roll a die to see if Mr. Allen's in a good mood today or not. And if you accidentally roll 2 6s or something, if you roll 2 die, then he buries you and you're just out of the game. This could be really good.
Really fun. Roll the d20, get the 20.
There's this one card that is Miss Lemire goes on maternity leave again. And what? She's been on maternity leave twice. You guys just haven't really experienced it. Yeah, you can no longer get help in science for the next.
His favorite music during the entire class, and you can't focus.
Seriously, I was thinking was sick for a day plus 8 revisions. What the heck happened? Went to orchestra practice. Minus 1 AO, right? You have to give up an AO to catch up from being at orchestra practice, which is happening tomorrow.
No, a boss fight, Mr. Allen's in a bad mood.
Hey, by the way,
boss fight.
Go fast.
It'd be really funny, when you roll a nat 20, and it's Mr. Hudson brought everyone ice cream plus 2 happiness
It
or
was all
something.
poison.
But it was from China.
Plus 1,000 coronavirus.
You got it.
And then if you get over 100
Oh yeah, it should be
revisions,
like a
you
board
just die.
game.
No, it's maybe the objective of the Phoenix D&D is to have less than 40 revisions.
No, you start from 7th grade, work your way up to L revision.
There should be 2 bars, a revision bar and a happiness or HP bar. So every time you make a teacher that your happiness HP bar goes down, the revision bar goes over
No,
a
it
limit, or
used
your
to be
HP
like-
Well, what about your
bar is
effort
under-
bar? You're gonna need an effort
Oh
counter.
no!
Your effort bar is like a
Good.
multiplier for your happiness bar then or something. And it's just like when your
Yeah.
HP goes to 0, you're like, ah! You're like, got hit with that.
When your HP goes to 0, you get held back.
You're
No, it
just
should be
like,
like a 7th grade to the end of things. Like just to graduate.
Well, but if you don't make it through 7th grade, if you don't master 7th grade, you get kicked out to one of the other middle schools to repeat 7th
I
grade.
just
You
thought
really?
of-
Yeah,
I
you
just
don't
thought of
repeat
my
grades
Phoenix
here. So if
academia.
somebody doesn't master 7th grade, you then the card would be like, haha, go to McCord. Like,
My Phoenix academia.
this would be great.
Let's
I
make
honestly
some
think this
games.
could be.
People would actually play it.
Alright, so today we're discussing combining
It's not
functions.
Okay, it's like a bit fun. Choose not.
Wow, that sounds so fun.
So if you were working at NASA, and right now NASA is what NASA's still. I don't know why people like pick on NASA. Oh, okay. I thought you were like actually like laughing. NASA still does a ton, even though we don't do our own manned missions in America anymore. NASA still works with other countries to send Americans up on other ships. So do not think that like you can't go to Mars. You can. Like a student the other day was like, but NASA stopped sending people to space. I was like, you are so misunderstood. We as America don't send manned missions anymore, but we send people to like Russia and other places to go up with them. We've got people on the space station and everything else. So let's say you're working for NASA and you're trying to land a rover on Mars because we are doing a lot on Mars right now. There will be lots of things in play. The weather on the surface of Mars, the trajectory of the rockets that you have attached to the rover, the weight of the rover, right? Like all of these different things come into play. And when you are trying to do like this with your object and get your rover down to the surface, but then there are other things at play, the planet moving, the weather of the planet. Literally, there are multiple functions at play. The rover that we're sending up right now is supposed to land in a crater that we know used to have water. So I'm trying to relate current events to math I have to teach you, and like this would really matter. You'd have a function of your rover's trajectory, right? We talked about projectile motion. You'd have a function of the surface weather. You'd have a function of the planetary motion. You'd have a function of the gravity changes as you get closer and closer and closer to the planet. All of these functions would need to come together, get you to the right place. Or not, right? So, when we look at functions, we can put them together. So if we say f of x is x squared, c of x is 3, and g of x is 2x plus 1, what is the behavior that we'd see from c of x being the function 3? I keep kicking this because it's not wrong. 9.2.4. The next worksheet. Are we just what? Or 3-4. What, did we not finish some stuff yesterday?
I don't know if we did. We work on like
Fitness.
Wait.
Yeah.
Maybe I wrote the wrong thing down.
Oh my gosh. What?
Oh, today's Wednesday.
Yeah.
What the heck
I
are
was
we
We're
just-
doing 933. Sorry,
I thought
guys.
we were just gonna skip it.
No, piecewise functions are very important.
Oh,
My
that's-
bad, I looked at the
That's
wrong
why I
day.
was wondering. I was like,
So
I was just gonna
we do
skip
not
it.
need our packet.
I forget if you need your packet or not.
It is,
No,
there's
it's
not a
not in the
resource
packet.
page.
Okay, well, sorry.
That's why I was like,
You got some
wondering,
steps
are we
in.
just gonna like skip?
Drinking coffee.
Okay, my bad. All of that tomorrow, right? Put that start of class tomorrow.
Roll to see how bad.
What?
Mr.
Well,
Hubbard's
okay,
bad
look,
is.
I was reflecting on this week and trying to decide how to hook a lesson about combining functions, because it's kind of like boring. You just are doing the math. But the reason behind combining functions is when multiple things are moving, you have multiple functions at play that you have to make coalesce. I think coalesce. I forget what the exact word is. I'm trying to use a fancy word. I'm using it wrong. Come together and do what you want them to do. Now, for us to understand that, we first need to understand piecewise functions, which have a nickname that is kind of wrong. Close. You want to think more or no?
So it's like, they're not connected. It's just
Step functions.
So please write down piecewise function. You don't have to write piecewise define. Piecewise. Piece like peace, P-I-E-C-E. Wise like brilliant, W-I-S-E. A piecewise function is often nicknamed step. However, this is a misnomer. What is better than calling it a step function is a broken function. It is disjointed. It is disconnected. It is non-continuous because there are gaps. So whatever you want to say, the other way you can say it is it's a function with multiple functions.
Oh, great.
So we look at these steps down here. The function that would describe my first step is y equals 40. So Horizon Cellular, no copyright infringement there. Horizon Cellular offers a basic monthly plan for a low fee of just $40 a month, which if you could find a cell phone plan that cheap, you're doing a pretty good job. However,
No, it might not be the best.
However, that only buys you 450 minutes of talk. And let's say for kids, let's say for your generation, each text counts as a minute.
What the frick?
So, what? I'm just making you care
Do you
about
know how
it.
many people just spam other people every day? They're
I
just
know.
like, hi, hi, hi.
I
Like,
know.
boom, you're done.
I know.
That's why I
So,
said
that price then increases based off going over that amount of messages or minutes of your plan. So, $40 buys you up to 450 minutes or text. But as soon as you go over that, they bump your price up to this function that would be y equals.
So if you go over one, then they're like, oh, you gotta spend more money.
Yeah, so this is $40.50, right? Sorry, that is very hard to read. And that buys you
One more.
just one more minute
This
or
is,
text.
maybe
so
this
then-
isn't the best cell phone.
If this is 41,
Don't go over.
42. So wait, we're saying each minute of overage
It's 50 cents.
is 50 cents. Right? So wait, a lot of us would think, okay, so y equals 40 plus 50x. But that's not right. Because that would give us. My slope was way off from the get-go.
It's a step function, so like we're gonna have to
Like, that would line up like there, wouldn't it? Or really, I guess if I line up that point and these points, that's more linear. But that's not true. Because they don't charge me for half a minute or a fourth of a minute. Like, they just go to the next minute. As soon as I pass 450, they go to the next one.
Why it's a step function. Well, it's kind of like when we did the dashed line thing.
So how in the world do we write this as a function?
Don't.
We can.
No.
So that's for
Don't
you guys
easily.
to talk about for a minute.
Maybe there's just a
How?
sign like F and you just throw it in your little function.
You gotta put multiple functions in one, just like in the.
So let's say h of x is what Horizon is charging us. And actually, let's say h of t, either time or texts.
Oh wow.
You should write this down. No, not the whole thing. Ungroup. I did. I said ungroup.
Oh, I said
Just
I
gone
said
down
I'm
more.
Ungroup. No, you have to ungroup the. Trying to slide that separately. So. H of t equals. That's a bracket. So
Yeah, but I was
this
doing something after the bracket.
this is your cell phone plan is $40. When what?
When you text less than
Yeah.
So your h of t is going to be y equals 40.
Yeah.
But when?
when you have
You put a sign. You put a lesser
You do the
than
inequality
sign.
thing.
Inequality sign.
Less than
Less than or equal. What the heck?
Can my time be negative?
No.
So
What does that mean?
It has to be greater than
Oh.
0. You can't spend negative 1 minute.
What the heck?
you could spend 0 minutes. So less than or equal to. So guys, this, if you have forgotten some vocab, is domain. Domain is the x value, right? Range is the output, the y value. Our output, our charge, is $40 when time is between 0 and 450.
Oh.
However, our time then,
I get it.
or sorry, not our time, our fee, what we pay, would go up to 40.50 when, semicolon,
450.
Does the like the semicolon?
now does it include
It does.
450?
No. Does the semicolon just mean like when? Like, does it have a meaning or is it just?
Yeah, it's like, it essentially means when.
Okay.
Sometimes we use it as like if and only if, but then often we write IFF. I don't know why we use IFF for if and only if. So that takes us up to, we said 400, oh my gosh, 451.
It should be idle.
And then we could do 41, right? When is y 41? Ooh, not or equal. How can we tell if the point is included or not?
Oh, because it's either filled in or like not filled in.
Yeah, if it's filled in or not filled in. Right? Shaded or not shaded. Now, I want to Google before I say definitively, but there are two types of step functions. Remember, step is a type of piecewise function. But there are two types of step function, depending on whether it's open circle to a closed circle on this end, versus if it's a closed circle to an open circle on this end. One of those is called a floor function, and one of those is called a ceiling function. Well, it's step function, right? We put the step in there. We will talk in a moment about that after we look at a couple more and have some things to compare. So we could keep going, right? This would be annoying, but we could keep going. Thank goodness we're not.
We're probably gonna do some more.
Now the question would be, is that a function? Like, does it pass the vertical line test? Yeah, because that open point is open because it's closed right there. That open point is open because it's closed right there. That open point is open because it's closed right there. Literally anywhere that I draw a vertical line, I'm only going to intersect one point. And remember, this line doesn't exist. I just kind of put that there. So, okay, so it is a function.
Ugly function.
How in the world could we put that together?
Legitimate.
Like, I'd have to write out a bunch of these,
Oh,
right?
right.
Is there a way to avoid that?
Yeah, you can just write y equals this number to that number, and then put it all in.
So let's think about this. Set up an xy axis. We're going to go, our lowest x is going to be -4, so I at least go out to -5. Our highest x is going to be +5, so if you have at least a 5 by 5, for your X. I would say your Y should be a little bigger than that, probably just because we don't know exactly what's going to happen with Y. Excuse me. Try to draw these two different piecewise functions they've given us. I will give you a few minutes to do so, because I know they're not easy. Oh, I can't draw a straight line, no matter what. Even with a ruler, I can't.
Wait, if you can't draw straight line.
Screw it, whatever. I don't care. What a great summary of middle school.
That is not true. Grades are important. Kids don't like the reason why we fail middle school for the people.
So the first one's the Y and the second one's the X.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
It is telling you the value of the function in that given domain.
Y equals 3 when?
Why is it not a 3?
Wait.
Why is the racing one?
Negative
It
4.
bugs me that the 5's under the negative and like it could be denoted by like I don't know.
Careful with how the inequalities are or equal to or not or equal
If
to.
it's equal to, does that
It
mean
is
that
shaded.
it's like
In that moment, it does exist if it is or equal to.
Less than or equal to negative 4. Holy crap. I screwed up.
Oh,
look
yeah?
at the parabola step function-ish thing.
Okay, don't worry.
I don't know.
I mean, because yeah.
Because it goes like kind of down and up. Like if you made it into a line.
Now, let's say we were at home scared of the coronavirus. And you guys, not honestly funny because I'm scared this is going to happen. And you guys were on your own. And you Google floor versus ceiling function. Because maybe I've made a chalk talk, or who knows. But you're just like, yeah, okay, he talked about it, but I want to know what it is. Then, if this ever pastes, you find this result that has this notation that you've never seen before.
Do you mind going down a little bit so they can see the other thing? Because they're because
What, that?
Okay.
Oh, should we do B too?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, both.
Oh,
Because B is going to be a lot more fun to graph. Its behavior is funky. You need to, like, make a table, probably.
I don't like B.
Same graph.
Should we do it on the same graph or
Do
different?
it on the
Same is fine.
Wait, Mr. President, I don't know if this is rude or not. Is it rude to ask a teacher their age?
30. What would you have guessed, though? And I know your guess is now going to be biased, but...
I wasn't about to
Yeah,
I was just going to say, like the coronavirus only affects people, like, over the age of 50.
I look young and I act young, so pretty much kids are always guessing ages younger than me. And I don't say that to, like, be conceited, but people are always like, you're 30? Like, I get carded everywhere I go. If, like, I try to buy alcohol or anything, I'm always carded. And actually, the state law, depending on where you are, is, like, either 30 or 40 you have to look like. And I was like, yeah, I don't know when I'll ever look 30, but, like, how do you even determine that?
I don't know. It'll probably be a while.
The facial hair I've never tried before either. So this may make me look a little bit older, but it doesn't. You can't even really see it from far away because I can't grow facial hair. So whatever. So let's say. Well, first off, anyone really confident in the functions that you drew for A and B? One should be curvy, right? Okay, so before we move on to this part.
Wait, we can have 2x minus 5.
So if I make a little table for this being less than or equal to 1. Okay, less than or equal to 1, let's start at something negative. -3? I don't know. Okay, so here's the cool thing, guys. I can make one table for both functions. When my x value is -3, -6 minus 5, -11, -4, -9, -7, -5. And this does include 1. So when I plug in 1, 2 minus 5, -3. This point is kind of like your pivot transition point, though. 1 doesn't exist in this function. However, we do need to talk about it because it's going to get an open point, right? So what's the value of 1 when it's in this function? If it existed, because we need to put an open point there. Well, 1 minus 3, okay, -2 squared, 4 plus 1. Okay, so this will be 5. So notice we have 1 twice here.
Wait a minute.
Then 2, 3, 4. We can keep going. 2 minus 3, okay, 1 squared is 1, plus 1 is 2.
Wait a second.
3 minus 3, 0 squared. Okay, so that's 1. Are you actually wanting me to wait a second, or are you just saying that out loud? 4 minus 3 is 1, plus 1 is 2. 5.
So, David, those are two, the one on blue is the top one, and the green one's the bottom one. It's not just one continuous.
So remember, based off the vertical line test, I cannot use the same input for two different outputs. However, this point doesn't actually exist. I'm just going to put it on the graph and leave it open.
So, should we start the graph?
You should have already graphed it. Yes, you haven't yet. So this is linear, right? This is pretty easy. This part's all linear. -11, -9, -7, -5, -3, and we stop at the -3. Then, at the point of x equals 1, this -3 should be shaded, but then this should be an open point at 5, starting your parabola behavior. So speaking really generally, your graph.
So, like, the line, instead of being, like, horizontal, like, can it be, like, perpendicular?
Would
I don't know.
line
It'd be,
like
like, slanted.
Yeah, the line
I
would
tried to
be
use fancy words and then
Yep.
confused myself.
So you'll have something like this. And this point is your 1. Right? But then there is, and I guess I'll do green, there's an open point at 5 because this point was closed.
Oh, I thought it was the other way around.
So actually this is continuous. The end of this should have an arrow because it keeps going.
Wait a second.
So over here, there's some point like -3, -11. Sorry, I should have had a graph up here, but I kind of assumed you guys would have an easier time with this. It's okay if you don't. I just
One point in the
probably made it wrong.
The egg.
So then at 2, this comes down to 2. At 3, it's down to 1.
Wait.
At 4, it's back up to 2.
So,
At 5, it's back up to 5. This should start to show a parabola.
yeah. But that's a weird, like, what's it called? Function. If it has a straight line and then
You are correct.
that's
That's weird, but that's what it should be.
weird.
We're all a little weird.
Haha.
Questions on how, when you're given the functions, how we can build a table with the transition point shown twice, but that actually is going to result in function behavior because only one of them actually exists
I
there.
think I know how to go through the things and brackets to the table and graph it.
Okay.
We'll go there next. Now, the reason, because normally people are like, okay, fine, but why did we have to do this if that function doesn't start till 2? That's wrong. That function isn't that it doesn't start till 2. It starts as soon as x is bigger than 1.
Okay, cool.
So 1.000001 right there beside the circle, right? That's why we make the open circle and then start our graph attached to that, because it's saying it exists up until x equals 1, and then it drops down to here. Now let's say you're at home and you're Googling this because you're like, yeah, Hudson's Chalk Talk was crappy. Who knows? It might be. Delete.
Okay, so floor basically the ones on the left are black and I filled in and then
Draw, please, on your paper. Point, line, point. This is your floor. This is your ceiling.
oh, ceiling is spelled like seal. Oh, wait a minute.
Isn't that how ceiling is spelled? I
think
before
so.
E except after C.
I think so.
Yeah, it's CEI.
Well, there are exceptions to that.
So when you want, and guys, I'm over teaching. You're not supposed to know this yet in this lesson. When you want your function to include the floor value, but not include the ceiling value, we use this symbol of just brackets with no top. When you want to include the ceiling but not include the floor, it's brackets without the bottom.
Oh, that makes sense. So it's
Now,
like
what the
floor and
heck is
ceiling.
actually happening here? Think about it. Your y value equals your x value, except the floor.
Those top two and those bottom two. Is it because of continuous?
Here's what that means. This symbol doesn't just mean like floor or ceiling. It also means the integer. So, we are rounding back to the integer based off whatever we've been told. This says round it all down no matter what period end of conversation. This says round it all up. Period end of conversation, like, well, okay, maybe I'm describing that poorly. So here's what I mean. When x is 0, y is 0, right? Y equals x. When x is 0.1, y is still 0 because we're rounding down. When x is 0.2, we're rounding down. When x is everything up until 1, and then 1 can't round down, it is 1. So it goes to 1. Then 1.1 rounds down to 1. 1.2 rounds down to 1. 1.7 rounds down to 1.
So I'm guessing
1.9 rounds, like if I go as small as I can.
1.9.
No, because it's a floor function.
So most companies use ceiling functions because they like.
Well, it depends. Do we want to buy the extra or do we want to buy just enough? So if I'm planning a party with pizza, or I'm going to say every 3 people needs a pizza. Person 4, do I round up to the next pizza or not? Well, I would because I want everyone to have food. But if I'm stingy and I don't want to spend very much money, I might say, person 4, we can still have 1 pizza. Person 5, sure, they might fight. We can have 1 pizza. Person 6, okay, now I'll order a second pizza because 3 people per pizza, right? Like, until I get another 3 people, I don't order another pizza. But, what?
That'd be a
Oh, you're just literally laughing about pizza. Okay, I thought I was making some sort of symbol. I didn't understand.
So
This is me and my pizza problem saying, like, okay, well, let's imagine the scale is different here. Let's just use that pizza problem. Up until my people is 3, 1 pizza is satisfactory for my party. But when person 4 shows up, I jump up to a second pizza. Person 5, still 2 pizzas. Person 6, still 2 pizzas. Person 7, I jump up to 3 pizzas. And I stay at 3 pizzas until we get to person 9. Because I can't order a partial pizza.
if you order more pizza,
That's why it's not.
This is why step functions. Math doesn't always equate to the real world, right? How many rooms do we need to rent in the hotel in New York?
not
Are you guys still
We can't rent a partial room to be determined. We can't rent a partial room. So every 3 or 4 kids, that's a room, but then we bump up to another. Then we bump up to another. There's no partials. So here's where this gets confusing. In the floor function, if I put input 3, 3 goes up to 3. And then everything up to 3 does. So 3.9 still rounds down to 3. But as soon as I get to 4, we go up.
3.9 repeating would still be.
Yes. And this is where people get confused. We jump up. This is the floor, though. We jump up to the next floor. As opposed to, we stay at the ceiling. We include the ceiling, and then we bounce up. Jump, or whatever you want to say. So that's the difference between a floor function and a ceiling function. The floor includes the left point. The ceiling function includes the right point. Does that make sense? All of this you're not supposed to know yet.
Oh, well. Well, we know.
So, Elisa is training to run a 5-mile fun run. Fun and run do not go
Did
together.
she just put 5
One
miles
day-
fun run?
Yes, I know, that is an oxymoronic statement.
I don't know,
Athena's
it's
I run. No,
One
I
mile was
don't
kind of
run.
fun,
I
but
don't
Actually, I
run.
5 miles
should.
is
I
not.
need to run a little bit more.
I don't run for fun. I run when I want to.
I run when a bear chases me.
I feel
That's
like
when I
a
run.
1 mile
Get bear
would be a
spray.
fun
You
run.
start running.
5
you're
miles is
afraid.
like a deathly
I
run.
went for the last.
Actually, I did run 2 miles last week. I was proud of myself.
What?
So, one day, she runs from her house to her friend Anna's house 2 miles away. Elisa talks to Anna for 10 minutes while she stretches, then she runs home. Elisa runs at a pace of 1 mile every 10 minutes. Excuse me. We are going to graph how far she has traveled. Okay? So, set up a graph, just quadrant 1. Positive time, positive distance. So we're going to be like this.
Is there like a
This is going to be time. Almost always X is our time.
no? But I'm saying, should we just like put a scale on it, or just leave it?
Well, let's look at what scale should we use. She runs 2 miles, and if her pace is 1 mile every 10 minutes, how long will it take her to run 2 miles? 20 minutes. So the first thing we're going to do is find a point 20 minutes in. So I don't know, if I make that 10 minutes, then I guess that could be 20 minutes. And find a point 2 miles up. And that is our 20 minutes and 2 miles. Right? And if she runs at a consistent pace, that would be a straight line. She knows. She's a good runner. Runners that are training normally do not sprint, walk. They just run at a consistent speed.
I
That's
feel
better.
like, even though I run it, it's not like a consistent pace the whole time.
Well,
Like
yeah.
sometimes it's a little bit.
We're averaging. We're saying on average she's running consistently. Now, when she stops to talk to her friend, does her distance jump to any other point?
No. This is
No.
the same, but her time.
Her distance stays the same as time continues onward.
Oh, no.
So that would be 30 and still 2. Right? She has still only traveled 2 miles. Because, they're spilling the tea with each other.
Oh,
ability takes care of she said.
Then, wait a minute. On her way home, she's tired.
You know, after you drink the tea.
Every 1 mile. Every 1 mile takes 12 minutes.
Oh, but I made mine so nice.
So how long will it take her to get... Ooh, wait. Distance from home. So should our line still be increasing or should it be decreasing?
Oh, we learned about the
Decreasing now, because we're going back towards home.
Oh,
So if we're going back towards home,
it's gonna be.
We said that distance was like the total travel. That was like.
Yeah,
I know, I
about
misspoke.
displacement.
shh, I misspoke. It's okay. Move on with your life.
So what?
How long does it take her to get back home? So then this would be 54 and 0 for distance away from home. Now, if you wanted to keep going distance traveled, obviously you could just go up to 54 and 4. So there would be a hypothetical 54 and 4 if you wanted to take what I had said initially. Here's the problem, and here's where we'll pick up tomorrow. How do we write this out as a function?
I don't know.
Hey, so to start you on, and you guys will have to remind me so I don't jump to things that we don't need to be doing yet. What is the function that describes this part? What is the function that describes this part? And what is the function that describes this part is what we will start with tomorrow. And that, of course, will be one of those, like f of x, bracket, one of those things. All right, thank you guys very much. Sorry about the startup being awkward. I seriously was just looking at Thursday in my planner. That's why I was so confused. Goodbye. Yeah, it's okay. We only didn't get to one more problem. We can talk about that.